The police officer couldn't believe the call coming through the radio. 3 armed robbers neutralized, intervened by 65-year-old night guard. When they arrived at the scene, the sight was even more astonishing. The robbers were professionally tied up, their weapons disassembled. The guard was drinking tea. "You're a bit late," was all he said. Welcome to Forgotten Warriors. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And if you believe heroes can be anywhere, subscribe. Because some warriors may take off their uniforms, but they never leave duty. Riverside Industrial District, the city's outskirts, the most boring assignment for night shift guards. Over 200 warehouses, hangars, workshops, and valuable materials in each one. But there hadn't been a serious incident in the last 10 years. Until that night. November 15th, Friday night. Cold, rainy weather. 2:30 a.m. Frank Morrison was sitting in his office, reading a book. 65 years old, medium height, slightly overweight. His gray hair was thinning. He wore glasses. A slight limp in his left leg. Riverside's night guard for 10 years. People liked him. "Good evening, Uncle Frank," they'd say. He'd smile and wave. A quiet, calm, harmless man. He'd tend his garden during the day, have dinner with his wife in the evening, and come to the warehouse at night. Routine, boring, safe. That night, everything seemed normal. Frank was reading Stephen King's new novel. A thermos of tea beside him, half a sandwich on the desk, light jazz on the radio, a small electric heater at his feet. 2:47 a.m. A sound outside. Engine noise. Frank looked up. No trucks came at this hour. He listened carefully. The engine stopped. Then silence. Frank slowly put the book on the desk. He took off his glasses, cleaned them, put them back on. He stood up. The pain in his left leg was there as always. He looked out the window. He saw a van in the darkness. Lights off. Movement inside. The old Frank would have acted immediately. But that Frank was 30 years ago. Now he was just an old guard. He reached for the phone. He should call the police. Just then a sound came from the back door. Metal cutting sound. Frank stopped. He slowly put the phone back. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes. "Again?" he murmured to himself. He stood up, rubbed his left leg. Then, his posture changed. His shoulders straightened. His head lifted. The drowsiness in his eyes disappeared. He opened the desk drawer, took out a flashlight. Just a flashlight. Nothing else. No gun. Frank didn't need a gun. Never had. Sounds were coming from the back door. Whispers. At least 3 people. Frank turned off the lights. The room plunged into darkness. He became part of the darkness too. "There's an old guard inside," said a voice from outside. "Harmless. Probably asleep anyway." "Make sure," said another voice. "I don't want witnesses." Frank smiled in the darkness. Witnesses. He'd heard this word a lot 30 years ago. Leave no witnesses, leave no trace, be a shadow. Just the open book, half-drunk tea, still warm heater. "Where's this guy?" That's when Frank spoke from within the darkness, in a calm, controlled voice. "Behind you." All 3 turned, guns raised. But they couldn't see Frank. There was just a voice. "Drop the weapons," Frank said. "I don't want anyone to get hurt." The one with the crowbar laughed. "Who are you to give us orders, old man? Come out." Frank turned on the flashlight. The beam hit the crowbar guy's face directly. The man closed his eyes, covered his face with his hand. Frank moved. One motion, the crowbar fell. The man dropped to his knees, couldn't breathe. The second robber tried to shoot, but Frank had already moved. He wasn't the old limping guard anymore. He was something else. He grabbed the gun hand, Twisted. The weapon fell. Elbow, knee. The man hit the ground. The third robber snapped out of shock, fired, but Frank wasn't there. The bullet hit the wall. "Where are you?" The flashlight went off. Darkness. Then a voice. Close. Delta Force teaches, darkness is your friend, but only for those who master it. The third man fired wildly in panic. 4 shots. 5 shots. Then a click. Out of ammo. Frank's voice came again, from a different place this time. Don't shoot when scared. Calculate. Plan. But you can't learn that anymore. A movement. A scream. The third man was down too. Frank turned on the lights. 3 robbers lay on the floor. The first still trying to breathe. The second holding his arm. The third wasn't moving, but was breathing. Frank went to his desk, picked up his phone. 911, Riverside Warehouse 14. 3 armed robbers here, all neutralized. He paused. No, I'm not injured, just a bit tired. He hung up, took plastic zip ties from the drawer, tied up the robbers one by one, professionally, the work of experienced hands. Then he collected the weapons, removed the magazines, disassembled the mechanisms, laid each part separately on the desk. He boiled water, made fresh tea, picked up his book but couldn't read. His hands were shaking. Not from old age, from adrenaline. After 30 years, that feeling again, both familiar and foreign. The police arrived 15 minutes later. The first unit was 2 young officers. They saw Frank at the door, teacup in hand, tired smile on his face. Hello, boys. You're a bit late. The young officers entered, saw the scene. 3 men on the floor, tied up. Weapons disassembled, arranged on the desk. Everything orderly, systematic. Did you do this? Frank shrugged. Had to. Needed to protect the warehouse. Commissioner Jake Sullivan arrived 20 minutes later. 45 years old, experienced cop. He knew Frank. Everyone knew him. Old, harmless guard Frank. Frank, you okay? I'm fine, Jake. Just didn't want this. Jake looked at the men on the floor, then at Frank. Something seemed off. Frank, how? I mean, 3 armed men. Frank sighed. Luck, Jake. Just luck. But Jake wasn't convinced. As a senior officer, he sensed something. The way they were tied, how the weapons were disassembled, the way the men were neutralized. This wasn't amateur work. Frank, can I see your ID? Routine procedure. Frank hesitated, then pulled out his wallet. Old, worn leather wallet. He took out his ID, handed it to Jake. Jake looked at the ID. Frank Morrison, 65 years old. Address. Then something caught his attention. Behind the ID was another card. Military ID. Old, faded. Frank, this is... Frank reached out. Please, Jake, that's very old. But Jake had already pulled out the card. His eyes widened as he read. Master Sergeant Frank Morrison, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment-Delta. He looked up. You, Delta Force? Frank took back the ID. Former Jake, very former. 30 years ago. Jake's hand was trembling. Delta Force, you're a real... No, Frank said sharply. I'm a guard. For 10 years, just a guard. The ambulance arrived then. Paramedics examined the robbers. Incredible, one said. No broken bones, but muscle groups completely paralyzed. How? Frank was looking out the window. Doesn't matter, he murmured. Jake came beside him. Frank. Why? Why are you here? After Delta. Why night security? Frank turned to look at Jake. There was deep exhaustion in his eyes. Everyone has a story, Jake. Mine is complicated. Will you tell me? Frank hesitated, then sat down. Jake sat across from him. It was 1993. Somalia. Mogadishu. You heard about Black Hawk Down? Of course. They even made a movie. Frank laughed bitterly. Movie, yes, but the reality was different, Jake. Very different. He stopped, took a sip of his tea. I was there that day, when the helicopter went down. 18 hours. We fought for 18 hours. Every corner, every street. My friends. His voice broke. We lost 19 men. 19 of my brothers. Jake was silent, didn't know what to say. When I came home, everything was different. They said PTSD, therapy, pills. But I couldn't sleep, Jake. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Durant, Gordon, Shugart, all of them. Frank stood up. Went to the window. One night my wife woke up. I wasn't there. She found me in the garden, with my gun. She knew what I was going to do. Frank, she said, don't leave me, please. Tears rolled silently down Frank's cheeks. The next day I resigned. From Delta, from the Army, from everything. We moved here, small, quiet place. My wife taught school. I looked for work. But what could I do? All I knew. He looked at his hands. All I knew was fighting. Security work? Frank smiled. Simple, calm, didn't have to kill anyone. Just protect. For 10 years, this is the first time. First time I had to do it again. Jake stood up, touched Frank's shoulder. You didn't kill them, Frank. Just stop them, skillfully. I know, but that feeling, Jake, that old feeling came back, and I hate it. The detectives arrived then. Crime scene investigation began. Cameras were checked. Detective Rodriguez whistled while watching the videos. Wow, you see this move? 2.3 seconds. 3 men down. This is training, said Jake. Highest level training. Rodriguez looked at Frank. Who are you really? Jake intervened. Frank Morrison. Hero. But you didn't hear that. It was 5 a.m. The robbers were taken to the hospital. Police were preparing reports. Frank was still sitting. Tired. Exhausted. Frank, said Jake. Go home. Rest. We'll take your statement tomorrow. The warehouse? We're here. Don't worry. Frank stood up, put on his jacket, walked to the door. Jake called after him. Frank, thank you. Not just for protecting the warehouse, for protecting this country for 30 years. Frank turned. For the first time, there was a spark in his eyes. You're welcome, Jake. I just did my duty. And he left. An old, tired man. But as Jake watched him, he saw something else. A warrior. Wounded. Tired. But still standing. The next day, the local paper ran the headline. Hero Guard stops 3 armed robbers single-handed. Frank didn't read the paper. He was home with his wife. What happened last night? His wife Helen asked. Nothing, said Frank. Just some trouble. I handled it. Helen looked at her husband. 40 years of marriage. She knew everything. Again, Frank nodded. Helen sat beside him, took his hand. Are you okay? I don't know, but I didn't kill anyone, Helen. Just stop them. I know, love, I know. That evening, Jake came to Frank's house. He had a box in his hand. Frank, I was asked to give you this. Frank opened the box. Inside was a letter and a badge. He read the letter. His eyes filled. What is it? Helen asked. Thank you letter. From the warehouse owner. And he showed the badge. Honor badge for my courage. Jake smiled. You earned it, Frank. Really earned it. Frank looked at the badge, then offered it to Jake. I don't want this, Jake. I'm not a hero. Just did my job. No, said Jake. You'll take this. Because people need to know. Heroes live among us. Quiet, modest, but real heroes. Frank took the badge, put it on the table. Maybe someday, maybe. Weeks passed. Frank returned to work. Same warehouse, same shift, but something had changed. People looked at him differently, with respect, with gratitude. One night, a young man came, in his 20s, had a military bearing. Mr. Morrison? Yes. I'm Sergeant Davis, 82nd Airborne. I wanted to meet you. Frank was surprised. Why? My CO told me about you. The legendary Morrison. Delta's ghost. Mogadishu hero. Frank shook his head. That's an old story, son. No, sir. Legends don't die. They just evolve. You're still a hero. Just in a different war. Davis left. Frank thought about it. Maybe he was right. Maybe the war hadn't ended, just changed form. And maybe, just maybe, he still had the strength to fight. After that night, Frank changed. His back straighter, his steps stronger. He was still the same old guard, but not just that anymore. Walking his midnight patrol, he murmured to himself, "A warrior doesn't retire, just changes missions." And he continued. Old guard Frank Morrison, Delta Force's ghost, forgotten warrior. In the silence of the night, among the shadows, still on duty.